Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 82, and our book is the third and final book in the Ahriman Omnibus, Ahriman Unchanged. We posted several questions on our website, WH40k.bookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Twitter, YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning. If you haven't yet read the book, go definitely check it out and then come back to this post, as we'll be talking about it from start to finish in great detail. Spoiler alert, he doesn't fix the Rubik. Anyways. With that, let's dive in. Carrie, did you like this book?
No, sir. I didn't like it.
No, sir, me either. That's not really a surprise, though, is it?
Should be surprising for me.
Yeah, so here's the thing about these books. Like, I kind of went into this one I went in cautiously optimistic to book one.
I enjoyed book one.
Number two, I was like, okay, maybe this one will be a little bit better. It was not.
No.
So I did not go into this book with great hope. But I was like, okay, look, Carrie enjoyed the first one. I think she kind of enjoyed the second one. Like, I hope that this book, because when you look at the reviews for this book, the ratings for it, so on Goodreads, it's about the same as the other books. But like on Amazon and on Google, it's way higher than the other books. So I was like, oh, okay, good. Maybe this will be like Carrie's going to love this book and it's going to make it all worth it. I was actually a little upset when you were like, I didn't like it. I was like, damn it.
Because this book was an exercise in futility. I mean, and you kind of like summed it up best, I think, in our chat discussion this afternoon when you said, maybe it's not totally John French's fault because, how hard, it's pretty hard to make a guy's story interesting when he really can't move forward. And like, you got a point there, but at the same time, no, you don't, because Rachel Harrison wrote a better Ahriman story, and I hated that book.
It was just a better Thousand Sons story because that one guy trying to bring back his brother, like that little, and I mean, okay, so you said that today, and I was like, God, I was trying to think about To Mark of Faith. How long was that that interaction that they have there? Maybe 10, 15 pages? I mean, it's like a short story's worth of content once you finally meet the Thousand Sons sorcerer, finally learn what he's doing, finally learn what the whole bag is. Like, yeah. And I would actually argue, too, that, because then that got me thinking, and I was like, Ahriman makes very brief cameos through memories in the Black Legion books, and those are better, like more compelling Thousand Sons stories. You can make them compelling, and I say that as a person who does not like the Thousand Sons. You can make them compelling. Mm-hmm. And Mark of Faith, and we'll talk more about this here later, but Mark of Faith touched on the one thing with the Thousand Sons I really do dig, and again, handled it better.
Yeah,
and we talked so much smack about Fabulous Bill, but
Reynolds, I continued to get frustrated with this book the more and more that I read it. And then honestly, you know what? The way that the first book was going, I had no idea that where this whole thing was going to go was that Ahriman's going to be like, I can fix my mess. Well, that's boring. You know why it's boring? Because we already know that you don't and you can't.
Because we already know that you can't.
I went and saw the movie Titanic knowing what was going to happen because I know history and it drives me crazy. Everyone's like, I didn't see the boat sinking. Well, then you're an idiot. It's like when my sister called me about the Alamo, the movie The Alamo. She's like, did you know they all died? I was like, yeah, because I paid attention in Texas history. It's the same thing here. Like, I already know that he's not going to be able to fix it. That's boring. But again, the Titanic, we know that the ship's going to sink, and they still found a way to make a really good, compelling story out of it.
Well, let's not get too carried away with the cheese whiz. But no,
Better than
you're
this.
well,
I mean,
I mean, shit.
no, Titanic is nowhere near like my favorite movie. It's one of those movies like I'm glad I saw it. I thought it was very good, and I've moved on with my life. Like I haven't ever really seen it again. You know, kind of like Saving Private Ryan. I enjoyed it. I'm glad that I saw it. I'm never going to watch that movie again.
Right.
And again, that's also one of those where you know the story's how it's going to end. It's not going to end well, but they still found a way to make it compelling. And I'm sorry, John French. None of this was compelling.
And I think you just hit on something actually very interesting there, because with Titanic, the point of the story. So I want you to imagine for a second, this book would be as if the movie Titanic circulated around that dude who designed the ship and the captain. If it was their stories about how that dude designed an unsinkable ship, that dude designed a ship that would never sink. No, nothing ever bad's going to happen. And the entire movie, they sit around going, ha! Thank God we're on a ship that's never going to sink. Like, it's that, like, again, the Titanic itself was the backdrop to a romance between Jack and Rose. But it was set during that so that there would be an instant tragedy. And anyways,
right.
like movies that deal Alamo, actually the Alamo movie kind of fell into that same plot where it was like, we're going to tell you the stories of all of the dudes who are there and why they're there and what they're doing and what's going on and kind of the geopolitical situation around the Alamo. Because a lot of people, I feel like the average person is like conceptually aware that, oh yeah, there's a place called the Alamo. All these guys went to defend it. A bunch of people died. It was part of a war, and there's stuff hidden in the basement. So, Pee Wee Herman references.
In the basement.
You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much what everybody knows about
I
the
heard
Alamo.
Pee Wee's bike is there.
Honestly, I'm willing to bet that of a certain generation, the only reason you're probably passingly familiar with like the events of the Alamo is because of Pee Wee Herman. So like, okay, so that was like more of an informative movie, right? But this is like, unfortunately, and I've mentioned this, I think at the beginning of each one of these books that we've read, is that what is Ahriman's bag? Ahriman's bag is, I want to fix the Rubrique, I want to find the Black Library. That's it. And this was a real opportunity, and I know
but
that
he never even like gets around to the Black Library. You know what? I would have found a story of him trying to find the Black Library so we can do research on fixing the Rubrique so much more interesting than this. 10 times. The things that he would do to try to find the Black Library, I would find that so much more interesting than this.
Absolutely. And we gave so much crap about Fabulous Bill, but this is the thing I wanted to say about Fabulous Bill is that, like, look, whether you liked the story or you found it compelling or not, because, look, I'm going to go ahead and mention that, yes, the core complaint with the Fabulous Bill books is still valid, that is not the same character that we saw in the Horus Heresy, and it is not the same character we've seen elsewhere. Josh Reynolds definitely went off in his own tangent about Fabulous Bill. However, those books are all about his experiments, and Josh Reynolds went ahead and like peppered some interesting ideas in there, right? Like his new men, he's peppering them throughout the friggin' galaxy. There's that planet where that the governor and his wife are his new men, right? Which I actually started giggling this afternoon thinking about this, because then I imagined like that planet all of a sudden has some badass guardsmen. Like what do you mean they ran 35 miles in like 2 hours? What? But he managed to find something while maintaining the core of Fabulous's Bill's shtick, which is he's an experiment and a scientist. He managed to make him a compelling character and find stories that were not, now he changed the character way too much again, but find stories that were not just, he's an evil scientist. I think John French really had an awesome opportunity here. Yeah, maybe it's him discovering, like, why does he think the Black Library has the answers? How does he even know about the Black Library?
Right.
Like, he has all of these opportunities to, like, go down something else, but he decided to just... I think everybody on here probably knows, I think I've mentioned before, that Far Cry 3 is one of my favorite games I ever played, and all I could think of was Voss. Have I ever told you the definition of insanity? And especially, there's a part of that speech where he's just like, this time things are going to be different. No, 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 please. This time it's going to be different. And that's what this book felt like from both a meta commentary and an actual story commentary.
I was like, I told you, he's like the fly trying to get out the closed window. This time I can. This time I can. No, maybe this time I can get through there. Yeah. I mean, it's...
Is this a door? No. Is this a door? No. Is this a door? No. Is this a door?
And, you know, so you actually brought up another really interesting point with, like, the Alamo, and that the movie actually really focused on, you know, the actors in there. And, you know, he tried to do that here with Ignis and Theseus and, gosh, even the Athenaeum, which, please, you know, and Astraeus and everything else. He really tried, but he couldn't even, none of that was even that interesting. The only thing to me that was interesting about any of the side characters was Ignis's really weird relationship with Credence, which just kind of cracked me up most of the time, and I got really sad when Credence died. But yeah,
yeah, no, it's let's dive in, shall we? First and foremost, what part stood out to you? Because I do believe in getting that out at the top of the hour.
The last page of the last chapter, not the epilogue, but the last page of the last chapter, and that is when his rubrique, Helio Isidorus, remembered his name. I was like, okay, that is sweet, very cute, and that kind of touched me because it kind of reminded me of in, I think it was in Black Legion, when Iskander's rubrique were killed, and they called out to him before they died. You know, just kind of that's like, oh God, so like there is like something left to them. And there were moments in the book that, you know, had a lot of, I thought, nice little insights into the problems with Thousand Sons and really the problems with Ahriman. You know, a lot of good insights into that.
Well,
but then,
before you move on to
for
that,
like, but for what?
Mm-hmm. Before you move on that though, I want to, because I agree with you. I liked a lot of the stuff with the rubrique, and this was probably the most interesting thing. And as I mentioned kind of earlier at the top of the hour, that was one of the reasons I really liked that scene with Rachel Harrison, was that when she says, when that sorcerer, when it's revealed that the whole reason he's basically trying to destroy the known universe, is because he just wants to hear his friend's voice again. And that's the part that makes it so sad, because it's very easy to forget that these people, they were people. Like, they were human beings. They were friends of some of the Legionnaires that still exist. We got to see it a lot with Iskander, as you said, when his two rubrique call out his name, right? The scene that I like is very similar to the one that you liked, and it's that scene when it's Ignis and Gamata talking, and they're like, oh, you can't say their names, because their names kind of pull at them a little bit. And then there's that scene when Ignis looks down and all of the rubrique are looking up at him, and he's like, oh geez. The thing that I liked the most about it was that, and he's kind of, and John French has kind of touched on this in the other two books too, but it's this idea that even they don't really understand what happened to the rubrique. Like, they think they do. They're definitely shells, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing really there. But there's the potential for something there. And maybe, and that's one of the concepts that I really like within the Warhammer 40k universe too, the idea that names have power.
Right.
It's one of those things where I'm like, ooh, the Black Library, I feel like, keeps teasing. They just keep teasing at the possibility that maybe there is something to what Ahriman wants to do. Like, maybe these guys can be fixed. Maybe the Thousand Sons don't really understand what they did, which I know what you're thinking. The number of times they've gotten screwed over by warp sorcery nonsense.
Well, and the thing is, like, it's suggested that it's possible that they could, but Magnus is like, but then it's going to break me. Well, hun, you're in the planet of
Is it?
sorcerers and you can't find your pieces all over the place. And by the way, I
I'm sorry, you
hate.
mean his Horcruxes?
That's exactly what I thought. Drove me crazy. I actually hate that trope. Not even
Oh my God, no, no, no.
before Harry Potter, you know, had it. At least Harry Potter made something interesting out of it. Something. But this whole thing is like, well, pieces of me got scattered and I'm not sure where they are. Oh, just stop. Just stop. This is not an episode of Inuyasha where we have the crystal shard that is broken to a bazillion pieces. We have to go put it all together. Like, no. Like, yes, there's the whole thing about that statue that broke in front of you, but it broke into the 9 pieces. So don't even, and that was how your first word got locked on by Zinch. So don't even try to say that, oh, we got broken into all these different pieces and a part of me is with it. No. Stop
No.
making up stuff to try to make this more interesting because it's not working. And all it's actually doing is making this worse. This whole thing, I mean, oh my God, you're like set on fire now. Like the whole thing with the labyrinth, the different places where he can possibly be. You know what? This is the type of bullshit that made me hate when the X-Men went into the astral plane because and maybe part of it is because there's no rules so they can do whatever they want, but it's because there are no rules and they do whatever they want is why the plot breaks. All you do
I
is
mean, let's be real. There's multiple reasons that the X-Men break. But no.
But when you put yourself in this like
so-
astral plane where there's no rules and anything can go here, all you do is create more plot holes. It's like why I can't stand alternate dimensions and universe thing. All you do to fix a plot hole by adding in an alternate universe is make bigger plot holes that have to be filled now with other alternate dimensions, which just make bigger plot holes.
I have been saying this since BioShock, actually since before this, but BioShock Infinite in particular. If in the process of writing your story, you need an alternate timeline, time travel, or an alternate dimension to solve a problem, stop. Go back. You have gone down the wrong path. You need to go back.
Then it's not a good story.
No, you took a left at Albuquerque. You need to go back.
Like Astreus.
And
I liked Astreus' story until I found out he got put into a time loop. I'm like, I'm done. And that's probably a lot of reasons why that I hated the Peter Fehavari book so much is that I don't like the time loop bullshit. I know some people do. That's great. You love the time stuff. Awesome. It's not for me, and all it does is personally make me angry.
Just and look, I think it is important.
Actually, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. So, continue. No, I'm not going to say it.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think it's important to note right here that this comes from you and I being very, I know we mentioned this before, but you and I are very long-term comic readers. The DCs and the Marvels, with my time travel, and my alternate dimensions. Like you and
Earth
I have been down this,
And Earth 616, or DC's Earth 1 and Earth 2.
Put that evil on me.
I need more tea.
No, like that's... But it's a thing, and I think that's why it's so particularly triggering to both of us. And we even said this in that Robbie McNiven, the Last Hunt. You remember in the end when they kind of get into the webway, and then they're like, "Oh, we're kind of time traveling." I was like, "Go back."
One thing I'll say about that one is that at least that was a finite closed loop, and it made sense.
It did.
The entire story did not predicate on this one little incident happening versus
that's true.
All of this. Like the more that we decided that we're going to weave out all these different places in the warp where Magnus and Ahriman's consciousness can be, miss me with that. And you can tell me all you want, but that's just 1,000 Suns. That's how they've always worked. No, that is not how they've always worked. That you go back and read 1,000 Suns. That is not how they always worked. They're doing it now because they've been banished into this area in the warp called the Planet of Sorcerers, and now basically Games Workshop is like, it's everyone's astral plane field day. And fine, whatever. Maybe my whole thing with being 1,000 Suns apologist, which I did laugh when I pulled up my our little splash at the bottom, and I saw that. Really, that probably goes back to the Horus Heresy, because honestly, the way that they depict the Thousand Sons, at least the way that John French in particular depicts the Thousand Sons in this, I can't do it. Like we talked about, that's not the Fabulous Bill from the Horus Heresy. This is not the Ahriman from the Horus Heresy either. They made, and maybe that's, part of it. Like I did like it when the Inquisitor, told Ahriman, or even told Magnus, like, it's funny that you're doing the same things that your dad did, and now Ahriman's doing the same things that you did. Like, don't you see how funny this is? It's like, well, yes, sister, you got a point. That's always been the point. Always been, ever since the Horus Heresy. But you can't keep hammering this home forever. It gets old. It shows that you've made, what you've now done? You've now made Ahriman be a flat, boring character, because you become flat and boring when you don't learn and you don't change and you don't grow. I think for this trilogy to have been really good, yes, we can start it from his exile, because I really liked how that started, where he's a beaten, broken person. Because I read 1,000 Sons. They get pouty like that when he's beaten and broken. And if he wants to like figure out a way to like fix things or get back in Magnus's good graces or whatever the hell he's trying to do, then we could have made this like a big search for answers, search for the Black Library. Not, we're going to fix the Rubrique. We already know that can't happen. We already know.
And that's, I feel the same way about that I do with like any long running series. And Harry Potter was somewhat guilty of this. The Marvel movies are certainly guilty of this, right? Where it's like, oh, named character is in great peril. Named character might die. Oh my God, they're gonna kill named character. Just kidding. It's named character plot armor. Like, I hate when books and stories do that type of thing, when they're just like, thing that can't happen. It's gonna happen. No, it's not. It's not gonna happen. Like, and I even
like Batman and Catwoman getting married.
Too goddamn soon. Throw something across the. Way harsh, Ty. Anyways, we even I'm to be fair, like, as in like to level out fair criticism here. We even kind of said that about Guy Haley with Dark Imperium. Like, it's all leading up to the big battle between Mortarion and Raboot Guilliman. And
but we know that they can't kill one another.
They can't kill one another, so like we kind of knew going in. But that's another good example of, we know that some Deus Ex Machina is going to happen and save one of them. What we didn't know is that it was literally going to be a Deus Ex Machina.
Right.
But he still managed to make it compelling, and he still managed to lead up to it in a compelling way. I think you're right. I think, like, and this actually dovetails really nicely into one of my questions here. It was that, like, this book was particularly an ensemble cast. Like, I feel as though, I think even John French kind of recognized a little bit that he's like, oh, I'm going to kind of pull away from Ahriman a bit because I can't do anything with him. So some of his cohorts, Ignis in particular, very interesting. I actually do, as much as I dislike this book, I don't like Ignis, but like, he's definitely the most compelling of the bunch and definitely the most sympathetic for me.
I actually just like the fact that there was a faction of 1,000 Sons that was devoted to math and,
numerology.
Yeah, they were, well, I mean, that was low, but I kind of deserve it after the Batman and Catwoman. No, just the whole idea that there's, mathemagicians. I kind of like that whole thing, because honestly,
concept's fun.
Like when, whenever they had him do calculations as he's watching things in battle, I totally imagined, I know you guys have all seen that gif of like that woman looking confused and all the math, all the numbers come across as he's like figuring it out. That's totally what I imagined every single time.
The part that I imagined, the thing that it made me think about was for people who were old school World of Warcraft players, the Leroy Jenkins video. If you watch the beginning part of that, they're like, yeah, Leroy, will you calculate our odds? And he's like, oh, okay. Or not Leroy, sorry, I can't remember the name of the guy
Right,
that they
right,
have.
right.
Calculate the odds. And he's like, yeah, it's like 19.333 repeat. And they're like, okay, yeah, I guess that's good. And then, of course, Leroy Jenkins says this thing. But that's like kind of how I imagine them. Like, all right, Ignis, we're going to need you to run the odds on this one. Like, he's a mathematician. It's amazing. I actually really, really liked that
Hmm.
concept about him. Um, but I feel as though had John French maybe focused a little more, like they almost could have focused more on those characters circulating around Ahriman and less on Ahriman and less of Ahriman's,
Ineptitude.
yeah, and his Charlie Brown tendency of chasing after that football that is most definitely not Magnus or Zinch messing with him. This time he's gonna kick it. Um, it was Magnetha all along.
I mean,
Um, I think that would have made it more compelling. But
I nearly
this
threw
one,
the book when that figment, that piece, whatever, of Magnus tells the Inquisitor. Yeah, it was actually, that was, I knew you guys had, Kallikamachus. I knew you guys had that. I'd set this whole thing in motion. It kind of reminded me of the Wonder Woman movie with, the God of War. How he'd come through and kind of did the whispers to people, just
mhm.
put the ideas in their head so that all this would come together. Kind of made me, okay, okay, so you've been pulling the strings like this entire time. And then Zinch is like, actually, I've been pulling the strings this entire time, and I'm going to go send this guy to go deliver this message, which ends up not happening and has no point, but that was totally my plan, was for it to not have a point. Yeah, you know what? If, of course, contrast that with, Neku constantly talking about control, control, control. I'm pretty sure that was on purpose to show that nobody is in control, no matter what anybody has to say. Zinch is not in control. Magnus is not in control. Ahriman is certainly not in control.
I have decided. So I think I've mentioned that one of the things that I really am getting tired with, especially with the Zinch factions, is this entire Xanatos gambit, right? Where they're just like, yes, everything that happens was exactly as we planned. But this is in like a subcategory of that of yes, it was me all along. I'm getting really sick and tired of that. And I think, and look, I want to say that like I know that some people probably that really probably resonates with people and they really like that. And I know that for people who are big Zinch fans, the whole like when I think of the word chaos or chaos, as the French say, oh wait, that's text to speech. Anyways, um,
Hey,
when I think of that concept, Zinch, I feel like embodies it more than anyone else because it's just plans upon plans upon plans upon plans upon plans, and everything is what he was planning all along. Um, in
I
this book, I
mean,
feel like in
to be
particular,
fair, even Games Workshop did that with Abaddon. See, like he wasn't failing this whole time.
you didn't understand the point of the Black
Yeah.
Crusade. Yeah, exactly. I think the thing that I struggle with, I just don't like that concept. I understand why some people do. Great,
I
awesome,
like
you do
it.
you,
Like
but it doesn't work for me.
I like it in certain circumstances. Like in Sorcerer, okay, I can see that.
Okay.
I can see how he'd be aware of this because I know another time that you liked it. You liked it in Lords of Silence because they kind of had it a little bit there as well. With
There's a difference between I've outplayed all of you and just played dumb, and oh, this setback. I wanted that to happen
see,
because it
I
means
don't
I
see
can't
much
play
of a
anything
difference
else.
between them, to be totally
I
honest.
do.
But
Yeah, so the Xanatos Gambit actually comes from the TV show Gargoyles, and I don't know
right,
if you ever watched it, but
I did
the
not. But I
episode,
had friends who loved it.
oh good, because it was so good. But the episode in particular that started the whole trope is this episode where they find this magic puddle, or it's actually like a fountain that will grant eternal life. Right, and that's what it's like. This whole thing is that they're going toward this, and Xanatos is going to try it, but like it's kind of maybe like unclear if it's going to work or not like that. And he gets his he gets his manservant Owen to try it. And so he puts his arm into it and his arm turns into stone. And Xanatos is like, oh, right, yeah, it was the wording. You would become like unaging, not necessarily immortal. So he's like, oh yeah, this serves my plans perfectly anyways. And he walks off, right? Like, how? And I loved the show. The show was amazing. But even then, it was kind of like, a little on the nose. So that was the one that really kind of got that whole thing started. And I feel like that's kind of like it's when the villain takes a setback and then says that no, that's actually what I wanted because it sets me up for this future thing that you didn't know I was planning. That's when the Xanatos Gambit comes in, right? Not the I was playing you the whole time and I knew what was going on.
All right, so
like
it's
setting people up.
It's a microscopic thing. Let's be fair on that. I think it triggers.
I disagree.
Well,
and that's fair, but the point being, I just get tired of it with Tzeentch, and I feel like now they're leaning a little too heavy into it.
Well, what I was going to say was like the sorcerer, I understood it. That actually fits in perfectly with the way that Ahriman works, and I could totally see that he saw this happening the whole time and was working it all to his advantage. Because that's just the way Ahriman do. But with this one, you find out it's Magnus pulling everything. I'm like, no, no. Like, I understand.
Those two need therapy.
I understand. Oh my, well, that's not narrating. That's like everybody.
Get them a family therapist so that dad and son can talk it out.
Dad needs to talk to all of his sons.
You got me there.
And I know I've made this comparison before, but like one of my favorite quotes out of the Deathstroke comic was when Wintergreen was saying, like, we're about to undo the entire world because a man doesn't know how to hug his children. And that's like the Emperor in a nutshell. We're ending the world because he doesn't know how to hug his kids.
Talking about Magnus and Ahriman. They need to get into some therapy, like either family therapy or couples therapy or all the therapy, and just talk it out.
Yes. I mean, if...
Maybe they just need hugs.
If Magnus had talked to him way back when he messed up, if he had talked to them and let him know this is my plan and not just been out and like pouted and been like, just let them come. And Ahriman's like, no, like, and he wouldn't talk about it. A lot of this could be avoided. People would talk, but then we wouldn't have conflicts and then we wouldn't have any of this to talk about. So I suppose maybe it's good that they act like little children, but regardless. So, okay, fine. So Magnus is a demon prince. Yes, he'd be aware of all this. I don't think you're going to say he's been aware of all this to this point. Then you're saying he's greater than Tzeentch, and I'm not sure. You're going to put him like up there with the chaos god of Tzeentch. Like, he can't be omniscient. He can know a lot without knowing everything, and I think that's where the disconnect for me like really, really happens. But also, you can't take Magnus, this guy who like, I know everything about everything, and yet Lucas is able to like, this piece of paper? This is not what you're looking for.
I can't even with that scene. And I when we read that book, that was like, I didn't enjoy that book, and that scene made me hate that book.
Honestly, I kind of enjoyed that because I could totally see Magnus being like, I am so much smarter than you. Like, there's no way you're tricking me, which is kind of like, I think that was Gav Thorpe's point, was that he thinks he's so much smarter than everybody. But then that's the problem. He thinks he's so much smarter than everybody. And the sad thing is he's often right, but things he thinks that he is. And then Ahriman's like, I also know better. And so you have these
it's the battle of egos,
right? Oh my god, it 100% is, and it gets frustrating. But as I've said for now like the millionth time, and I'm sure listeners will be like, "You've said this already, Ayn Rand." I can't take the whole thing. Mine is like, I totally knew this was going to happen. I've set everything up to go to follow my plan. When you know what, asshole, you could have found. If that was all true, you could have found a bazillion other ways to have messed this up for him.
Well,
like,
the thing too, like, really? this overly, and again, I know it's on brand for the Thousand Sons. It is certainly on brand for Tzeentch. By the way, can we really quickly just talk about that one time that Tzeentch showed up?
Sure.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, whatever. Pouring the last
Yeah, I
of my
think that
Ahriman tea.
that pretty much sums up my feelings on that whole scene. Actually, you just
The whole scene was
encapsulated it there.
stupid. The whole idea of the changeling was also stupid. It amounted to nothing, which is kind of what the whole story was. It amounted to nothing.
I also really did like that. I liked the scene in Throne of Light when the Changer of Ways shows up, because I found that scene delightful. Right? It's oh my god, his name just totally slipped my mind right now. But it's one of like the big guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
He shows up and he is delightful, right? Where he's basically like, "Who the hell are you to summon me?" And he's just a greater demon of Tzeentch.
Right.
And so I know that this isn't the right use of this phrase, but it felt quasi Mary Sue-ish, where it's like, oh, my Ahriman? My Ahriman is so cool that the god of chaos himself came down to talk to him and was like, dude, you're pretty cool. Like, it felt very weird and out of place. I mean, we've really only seen in books, we've really only seen a major cameo, recent books, I should say, because who knows what's in the way back. But in recent books, we've really only seen one major cameo from the god himself, and that was when he was talking to Jimmy Space. Like, in the Dark Imperium, right? Nurgle shows up to talk to the Emperor.
After Jimmy Space set his lawn on fire.
To be fair, you would come out of your house to talk to him, too, at that point. Like, the hell are you doing? Get off my lawn, kid! Like...
It's on fire, old man. What you gonna do now?
Put a bag of flaming dog poop on there. Go stomp that out. But like that's like the only time really that we've seen that type of a cameo. So this felt, it rubbed me the wrong way. It felt like, because the whole concept of the Mary Sue character is that all the main characters think this person's so cool, and that it just felt like that to me.
Well, I mean, but I'm gonna give him a gift, the gift of oblivion. Okay. So how much do you really like him if you're going to give him the gift of oblivion? Which actually, that's probably what Ahriman actually needs and wants in the end. But then he's like, you know what? Not yet. But this is really what I had planned, was for it to not happen yet. Okay.
That Tzeentch in a nutshell? Not yet.
Whatever.
But you're going back to, because I was thinking about it, I was like,
I don't got
really
time for this. Like, you know.
Kind of. So, okay. Let me ask you this.
I'm so disappointed. I'm like so disappointed. As an 1,000 Suns fan, like this book like crushed me on the inside. You know, probably in the same way that the last Space Wolves book that the Wolf Time like crushed Space Wolves fans, and I was just like, this is great, because that's really how I feel about Space Wolves. So I'm sure
in a lot of ways I kind of sympathize with you, and I have to tell you, when I was reading this book, I actually did have a moment when I was like, oh, this is how Carrie felt with the Wolf Time, because
I can see that for people like this is how I've always felt about the 1,000 Suns.
This type of inane stupidity. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's the 1,000 Suns,
right?
Just blindly trusting, and arrogance. It's not just stupidity, it's arrogance. It is blind arrogance of, obviously I understand this. As a trilogy, because we're not going to even talk about the fourth book, because this book was definitely, or at least I feel as though this was definitely written to be a trilogy immediately. Or at least the omnibus, it feels very contained. Does it work for you though? Like as an omnibus?
As an omnibus, yeah. It's Ahriman found, Ahriman fails. What's next?
Ahriman flounders, Ahriman fails, Ahriman friendship.
Actually, that's a good one for the second book. Ahriman.
Yeah,
friendship.
I hear it in the Mortal Kombat
Oh,
voice.
that's how I did it. Like, you get the balloon art and everything. Friendship.
Exactly.
Ahriman and
I
friends.
Does this book contribute to the lore of Ahriman?
It depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, again, like, let's take like the wolf
Tell me
time
more.
for example. If this is how you've always seen the Thousand Sons, then yes, it just kind of like, oh yeah, see, this is how I've always seen them. If this is not how you remember Ahriman and how you see the Thousand Sons from the Horus Heresy or whatever, then this kind of goes against your lore, and to you it changes. But to me, honestly, both sides, it still changes nothing because nothing happens. It's like the Donna Reed show. Nothing ever happens. We might have some chaos because he was late. He, was late to dinner and didn't call. But in the end, nothing happens.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that I'm struggling with is that, like, again, with the Fabulous Bill series, love it or hate it, I can at least say some stuff happened in those books,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Clone Grim.
Yeah. Clone Grim.
That's kind of like a asterisk. Like, stuff
Well,
happened in
okay.
the Dark Imperium.
And if you want to forget about Clone Grim, the whole thing with Trazyn, that's huge.
That's especially huge because,
and it fits.
Trazyn.
It fits with Trazyn's lore too. So it's, yeah. So, yeah.
And it's a particularly interesting little seed to plant out there because you're right. It's 100% within his lore. And someday, like a year from now, if all of a sudden a book comes out and Trazyn's like, oh, did you guys know that I have a clone of a Primarch? We would be like, that makes sense.
That tracks.
Like, it's a very interesting thing to throw out there. But I feel like with this, like even Dark Imperium, they've basically retconned, they didn't retcon it, but they kind of made it, they basically made it not as meaningful or important because they moved away from that whole thing to go back. You can still say stuff happened in those books. Stuff happened. It was compelling. Yes, it ultimately, the whole Nurgle invasion of the 500 realms. But again, there's little seeds planted there, probably literally because Nurgle, that they can do stuff with, right? These books, I feel like nothing happened and there's nothing to really work with.
There's no seeds planted because, once again, the Book of Magnus is gone. Okay?
The Horcruxes have been destroyed.
Yeah, so Magnus is whole again or something, or what? You know what?
And on that day, his heart grew 3 sizes.
Sure. Whatever. Ahriman's still banished. He's still with his people who are still banished. The WH40k are not fixed. I kind of love that Iskander showed up to help, but at the same time, he's like, this is so gonna fail, and I'm gonna laugh in your face and then leave. I just want to see if maybe you can possibly fix the WH40k, but I don't believe that you can, and I'm just gonna go back to what I'm doing because they're cooler than you, which, I hate to admit it, you got a point, Iskander. But nothing's changed. And I'm fairly certain that's why John French called it Ahriman Unchanged, which is 100% way too on the nose. Mr. French, what was your ultimate goal in writing this? Because you can't tell me it's just to show that nothing really matters that the Thousand Sons do, because it's all just a bunch of fail and they don't do anything, because then I'm going to feel that I got more out of Twilight. Because at least shit happened there.
And I think you kind of tapped on something when you were talking about earlier when there's when we find out that dude's in the time loop. Because it kind of feels like they're in a metaphorical time loop of continually, again, it's Charlie Brown in the football. Ahriman is Charlie Brown. Tzeentch and Magnus are Lucy. Like, there's always this goal. And if you can just get over here, you're going to have it. And every single time he runs full force at it and falls on his back, right? And the
Are we saying that the WH40k is a little redhead girl?
Pretty much. There's a deep Charlie Brown reference. If I feel like that's just kind of the Legion in general, because we did see that in Mark of Faith with some other dude. It wasn't even Ahriman, just some dude.
Mm-hmm.
Where they all feel like they are stuck in this loop where neither their own wisdom nor common sense can help them escape, right? Again, it is the definition of insanity. No, 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 please. This time's going to be different. I know what I'm doing. I understand this better. Like Ahriman has that thing here where he's thinking about the second rubric and he's just like, man, I just know so much more than I did back then. I didn't really understand what I was doing back then. Bruh, you still don't. Like the fact that you guys keep turning to warp sorcery when it is not. It is. At what point has any of this helped any of you? The addict from Silent Hunters had more on the ball than these guys, and he was a literal drug addict.
But, and I'm turning over everything that happened in A Thousand Suns, and I'm like, all right, maybe I'm the deluded one. Okay? Maybe I am. Maybe this is just what they do. And this is just constant that we're just going to keep acquiring knowledge because that's what we do. Okay, fine. And then we think that we know more this time. We know more this time. We know more this time. We know more this time without realizing really the only person who has it is Iskander Kane, because he had one of the greatest lines. It was in the Talon of Horus, where he was talking about how he was those who trust like basically going through like what you should do with the warp, and one of the lines was like, those who trust, like you're a fool if you trust it. And he understood we're never going to know everything about it, because to try to know everything about it means that you trust it, and that's when you fail. And right. Maybe that's the whole thing with the Thousand Suns, is because they're going to constantly trust it, and therefore they're constantly going to fail. And if that's really the whole story to the Thousand Suns, well then I've been deluded since the Horus Heresy, and they're a boring faction. And that's sad. That is ultimately very, very sad.
So depressing when you say it that way. And I'm not even a Thousand Suns fan, but I feel as though, and the Space Wolves are probably guilty of this as well, I feel like certain chapters have just become, in the hands of some authors, certain chapters are just caricatures of themselves, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, well, what's like the defining feature of these guys? Oh, the Thousand Suns, okay, they don't like the Space Wolves, and they trust warp sorcery, and they're all kind of arrogant. Okay, cool, that's literally the only things that I'm going to give these people. The Space Wolves, right? Like, okay, well, what are their defining characteristics? Oh, they're very stubborn, they have a very devil-may-care attitude, and they like to help people. Okay, that's literally the only three things that I'm going to give these characters, is that they're stubborn. Yes. And I feel like, and you know what, maybe it comes down to some authors, like that's their only understanding of those legions, right? Like, it occurs to me, and I think a very valid question here is, does John French even like the Thousand Suns?
Well, God, I mean, I hope so. He's written, like, how much to it, but you know what? You said this like earlier today, and maybe his writing just doesn't speak to us.
And I wonder, I think this is a thing that I'm actually kind of waffling with some authors, like, because the Warhammer 40k setting is so broad and so open, and you can do so much with it, and there's so many tools to work with, I feel like some authors are very good when you just set them free.
Right.
Okay. Go write something in the 40k universe. And because I look back at the Covenant series, because we enjoyed the Covenant series. Asterisk next to that for a second, because I still have a point on that one. But like the Covenant series, okay, when you give him free reign, but there were scenes in his Siege of Terra book that have, I do not like this author anymore because of some of those scenes in those books, but those are set events with set characters. And the Ahriman series is a set character with somewhat set events. And I feel as though when you confine some of the authors, their scope gets narrowed. And I would actually say that Gav Thorpe is the exact opposite. I think when you give him Free Reign is when some of his weaker work comes out, when he has to write about set
Indominus.
characters and
Sorry.
set events. That one, I felt like Ash is a Prospero. I know you really liked it, but I did not. However, Luther really enjoyed some of his Horus Heresy. His Horus Heresy book, I think, are actually some of his strongest writing.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he has confines, he does a really good job, right? I think John French might be the guy who just can't do the named characters. And again, I know, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, just like Ignis. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. That I see all these people who are like, oh, this book is so good. The Ahriman series is so amazing. And I'm like, I don't mean this facetiously, but could you please hit me up?
Well, all right. I mean, how much hate did we get for bashing Penitence? I mean, we hated that book. We hated it. We hated almost pretty much everything about it, from the writing to the plot to little devices to everything.
Numerology strikes again.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, I'm not even going to bring that part up, but to who the reveal of who the king in yellow is and all of that. And we got attacked. Like, there were really very few people who agreed with us, and we, just got attacked. And some people, that book just spoke to them on a whole other level. And
that's true.
Okay. Great. I mean, we can, looking back at our video game days, you and I both cannot stand BioShock Infinite, and that was people's game of the year for the next 5 years, and they just loved it. So, I actually, one thing I do enjoy, it's always fun on this podcast when we both enjoy a book, but I enjoy this podcast even more when one of us loves a book and one of us hates it, because that's just so much fun to see just the different perspectives, like The Wolf Time, for example. Just
right.
the different, or Ashes of Prosper, just the different perspectives in coming in. And so even though we both really hated this one, and I have a lot of pent up anger over this book, it's really stupid, how mad this book has made me. But I would really love to know why people like this. And I don't mean that as in a condescending way, this book's terrible and there's something wrong with you.
Because, why do you like this? No, it's literally please help me understand.
Yeah, what is it about this series that really spoke to you, with The Thousand Suns? Or maybe it's just that, we don't like The Thousand Suns, and this just explained everything we don't like about them, kind of like how I felt with Wolf Time. So,
right,
which is, okay,
and I
I get that.
Maybe this is because I had this exact same reaction with Wolf Time. Like you said, it's ridiculous how angry this made you. Wolf Time infuriated me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good thing that I finished it several days before the podcast, because if we would have recorded on the night that I finished, it would have not been safe for work. There'd have been a lot of F-bombs in there, because I was so angry.
I felt like I've just let my mouth fly, so it's a good thing that we can't monetize on YouTube, because this episode is definitely getting flagged. But yeah. So,
it's and I feel and it's just because I think all of us have those legions and those ideas and stuff like that we just love. And it's really disappointing when you read a book that you're like, wow, this makes me question my love of this legion.
Right.
Now, and some people, and I'm kind of this way with some of the other legions, right? Like the Night Lords. There is literally no story that you can bring. Well, okay, that's not true. I'm sure there's some story out there, but no story that I have read that I'm like, oh, this really made me not like the Night Lords. Like Lord of Night, love it. The Night Lords Omnibus, loved it. The Robbie Mack book, which was the one, it was like the Blood Tithe or something like that. Loved it. With the Carcharodons, absolutely loved it. There's nothing you can do with them that I'll be like, no, I didn't enjoy that. I mean, I guess, again, I don't want to say nothing, because I guess if you all of a sudden had them singing Kumbaya, I'd be like,
oh,
no.
Nope, I thought of something, because you told me you hate this book. Vulcan Lives.
Okay. I hate that book for a different reason, and it's actually what they do with Vulcan.
Okay.
I hate that book because the concept of what is going on in that book is stupid. Fight me.
Okay,
and
I haven't gotten very far. I'm only on chapter two or three of Vulcan Lives. But like, I hate Conrad Kurtz.
I love Red
I
Curse.
know, and this really makes me question my friendship with you.
You're gonna hate him by the end of the
Like,
book if you don't like him.
I'm afraid to stay in your house. You stay in my house because, like, I don't know when she's gonna snap and start making a flesh cape.
When you get to the Unremembered Empire, I promise you this in my heart. I promise you, you're gonna love it then because he turns into a vampire lord basically, and he's fun. He's a villain that you hate, but he's a fun villain to hate. Um, Vulcan lives. Vulcan lives is actually a very hot subject in my home because I read it and I hated the whole concept of it, but it was also kind of low key, very Conradian. Um, and it did make me just really like the Night Lords. Like stuff would happen, and I'd be like, "That tracks," but I still hate the whole concept of this book. But that is pretty that tracks, and that's fair. And because it actually comes down to what happens to Vulcan, and that's why I hate it so much. Because I also do love Vulcan. I have very complex feelings on that book. But like I feel like it was that way with some books, but as you said, like the Space Wolves, I hated Wolf Time. I was so angry with that book. Kind of how you felt with this book.
Mm-hmm.
When you have those legions and people just are come through and they're like, oh yeah, I have a different opinion about this legion than you do. And I feel that way with John French. Like when you read Thousand Sons, it is clear that Graham McNeil likes them. When you read Mark of Faith, it was clear Rachel Harrison liked the Thousand Sons, right? They do make appearances. They do show up in books where it is clear how the author feels about these guys. I don't get a strong Thousands Loves vibe. Again, please, if you disagree with me, please talk me through it. I'm very genuinely curious and I want to know. And that's my TED Talk on that.
I think we need to wrap it up now. I can't imagine us saying anything else. Did we even go through all the questions?
Let me ask you so let me ask you my last question about this. Okay, we've gotten to the end. Do you feel prepared for the next book? Like, does this set up? Did this book end in a way that they're like, and a fourth book is definitely coming?
Oh, no. This book definitely ended with, basically we're going to go off and lick our wounds and probably keep doing the same thing. We like, gee, brain, what are we doing tonight? Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to fix the rubrique.
It was so funny having it come out. Because that's basically the definition of all of these books. I'm a little excited. I don't want to say excited because after this book I'm not excited.
But I am curious because that's going to take place post Rift, correct? All right. Yes. So that does open up all these other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I swear to God,
has he been looking for the Black Library? What does he think? I know meta wise that he's really interested after watching the Anari bring back Reboot. I know he's like, I'm sorry, what? But I'd like to see a book about that.
You have a library of knowledge, you say.
Tell me more about this reviving a Primarch thing. Was it Revivify or was it like Resurrection? D&D humor. I don't know.
It was warp fuckery. They don't have to explain shit.
You know what? It's magic. You don't have to explain anything in this book.
Exactly.
You want to take us down? Oh, actually, we should probably mention that. So, we will be reading a new book next time. The Wraithbone Phoenix. Speaking of things that people need to explain to me, if y'all want a fun rabbit hole to fall down, it is available on ebook. It is available on audiobook. We did purchase the paperback. If you want a fun rabbit hole to roll down, go ahead and tell me what the release date is for the paperback, because we found 4 different dates.
And we're talking about the Wraithbone Phoenix. I don't think Jen mentioned the name of the book, but the Wraithbone Phoenix.
The Wraithbone Phoenix.
Oh, by Alec Worley. Yes. So
crime. Heck yeah.
And apparently, but they're not on the side of crime that we're normally reading. So that makes it interesting. And okay, with the name Baggett and Claude, this is surely a play on Bonnie and Clyde, because it has to be. And if it's not, I'm going to be really sad.
Maybe superficially, but the characters themselves. If you haven't listened to the audio drama, I highly recommend it. Alec Worley remains one of the best
Come on,
authors
Baggett and
of the
Claude,
audio drama.
Bonnie and Clyde. It works.
It does. It does.
Or if you want to think of the spare one of the extra cartoons on Rocky and Bullwinkle, Bunny and Claude. I love that one.
Exactly. I liked those ones too.
They're all they wanted was carrots.
That's all they wanted. If anything, it's more. Anyways, definitely listen to the audio drama. The audio drama, I think, sets it up pretty well. I don't know how heavily the book is going to relate to it. I think other than just to introduce you to the characters, Alec Worley remains one of the best at the audio dramas. His stuff, all of his that I've listened to, just rolls so well, and the Black Library does a great job with audio dramas. Really excited to read this book, though. Would like to have the paperback if I could find out when it's coming. Again, that's a fun little rabbit hole. Tell me if you know the for realsies published date of the paperback. Has not shipped yet.
And you have to give us more than one source.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We're not Brian Stelter. We need multiple sources. Is that too soon?
Wow. Damn, she brought Brian Stelter into it.
Is it too soon? Sorry. Mr. Potato Head is all over the headlines right now. How to bring in something current.
Humpty Dumpty, whatever you want to call him.
I always love Mr. Potato Head because it's pretty accurate. But anyways, yes, multiple sources. Please cite something because we found 4 different ones. But that's going to be our next book. Super excited to get back into Warhammer Crime. It's been a hot minute since we had a Warhammer Crime novel.
Yeah, since Guy Haley's book. Because we've had a bunch of short story anthologies, collections, but...
That can't be right.
It is right, because there's been a whole bunch of short story collections.
I'm going back through all the books that we've read. That can't be right, but I think you are 100% correct. That feels like that was so long ago.
It kind of was.
Oh, you're right, because the other things that we've read have been... Because I was like, well, what about that Mark Collins book? It was a horror novel.
Yep.
Damn, son.
Just looked like
I'm excited.
It just looked like it was a Warhammer Crime novel, but it was not.
Darkness in the Blood. Wait, when did we read that? We read that in December of 2020.
Which book? Darkness in the Blood? No, that's a Blood Angels book.
Hey, Jesus, what am I... Y'all, it has been a day. It's been a while, though, since we've read it. That cannot be right. Flesh and Steel. Oh, guess what? It was before that. It was before December of 2020.
Oh.
So it has been almost exactly 2 years, because that was in October of 2020.
Cool.
That's a little wild. I feel like we missed something in there. Anyways, do you want to take us out with our imaginary books?
I will take us out with the imaginary books, because, yeah, so... Anyway, so you've listened to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding Ahriman Unchanged by John French. So be sure to join us next time. You know what? Forget it. I can't speak anymore. We're reading The Wraithbone Phoenix by Alec Worley. You know we're an unofficial book club. We're not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its other affiliates. You can find the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you liked us, if you like this episode, please subscribe, give a review, yada, yada, all those things everyone tells you to do all that on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. So our site also has articles about adventures and reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. Because in case you didn't know, I'm reading the Horus Heresy. I don't think I've mentioned that ever, but I am.
All right.
I know. We're going to get through this. So with all that, please stay a while and read for McCragg. And, I can't even say I'm Alfarius because I'm just... Whatever. I'm just still angry.
Grimmer Past was a crime novel. It came out in October of 2021. So it's only been a year.
There we go. All right, cool.
That's all I got. Good night, folks.
That's right.